Imagine coming home from a trip only to find police cars waiting, and your neighbor insisting you don't belong in your own house. Lorraine Pritcher always claimed she could spot trouble before it reached her street. But trouble, in her mind, never looked like it did that warm Friday in Scottsdale, Arizona. She was watering her petunias when a charcoal SUV rolled up to the grandest house on Alder Bend Drive, the white stone mansion. To Lorraine, that home was always under watch, more than her own. Out stepped a tall man in a dark travel jacket, sunglasses still on, tugging a black carry-on. His stride was calm, confident, as if he owned the place. Lorraine didn't see it that way. Her phone was in her hand before she thought twice. 911, what's your emergency? There's a man about to enter a vacant home on Alder Bend Drive, she said sharply. I think he's breaking in. Send someone quick. What she didn't know was that the man, Terrence Blakemore, wasn't an intruder. He was the owner. Fresh off a 10-hour flight from London, exhausted and hungry, he'd come back 2 days early to surprise his fiancée and reclaim the quiet of his space. But before his suitcase wheels reached the stone steps, sirens pierced the air. 2 patrol cars screeched to a halt, lights ricocheting off the mansion's pale facade. Sir, step away from the door, one officer ordered, hand hovering near his holster. Terrence froze, eyebrows lifting behind his sunglasses. Excuse me? This is my home. We just need to ask you a few questions, the second officer said, steady but firm. We had a call about suspicious activity. Across the street, Lorraine stood in plain view, shading her eyes with one hand, lips pressed in. She wasn't ashamed. In her mind, she just stopped a crime, whether or not there ever was one. Suspicious activity? Terrence echoed, setting his carry-on down. I just got back from a trip. I live here. You want my ID? My mail? I can unlock the door right now. The first officer flicked a glance toward Lorraine before stepping closer. Sir, we'll need to confirm your story. Identification and proof of residence, please. With a controlled exhale, Terrence pulled his wallet from his jacket and handed over his license. Check the address. Then check the deed. It's in my name. One officer carried the ID back to the patrol car, while the other lingered nearby, scanning the property as though expecting backup to appear. A few neighbors had already gathered at the edges of their lawns, whispering behind cupped hands. At last, the officer returned. Everything checks out. You're free to go inside. Apologies for the inconvenience. Apologies? Terrence shot back, voice sharp. Who even made this call? I did, Lorraine announced, stepping forward, chin lifted in defiance. This house has been empty for days. I saw someone unfamiliar. I acted. That's what a good neighbor does. Terrence stared at her, disbelief hardening into anger. Unfamiliar? You've seen me before. I've lived here for years. Her expression remained unmoved. I don't keep track of every visitor. I thought you might be trespassing. On my own property? His voice tightened. Do you call the cops on every neighbor returning from a trip, or just certain ones? Lorraine's jaw shifted, but no words followed. The officers exchanged a look. One of them spoke carefully. Sir, you're free to enter your home. We'll remain nearby if needed. Terrence turned the key in the lock, eager to put the humiliation behind him. But the moment the door swung open, an unfamiliar scent hit him. Lavender candles laced with something savory. Chicken stew. A smell that didn't belong in a house that was supposed to be empty. Dragging his suitcase over the threshold, he froze. Near the foyer sat a pair of coral pink women's sandals, scuffed and out of place. He didn't own them. They had no business being inside his $3.4 million Scottsdale home. Sir? Everything all right? One officer called from outside. Terrence's voice was steady but cold. Not exactly. Someone's been in here. That's impossible, Lorraine snapped. I've been keeping an eye on the place myself. No one's been inside. Terrence turned, eyes narrowing. Keeping an eye on the place? How exactly? I check in sometimes, she said, folding her arms, her voice brittle. just to make sure nothing suspicious is going on. The officer stepped forward, sensing the storm brewing. Let's confirm if anything's out of place, sir. But Terrence already knew the sandals were only the beginning. If you'd like, we can walk through with you, one officer offered. Terrence nodded, motioning them inside. He rolled his suitcase a few feet before stopping in the hallway. A faint perfume lingered in the air, not his fiancée's. He knew his house intimately, every creak, every draft, and something about it felt lived in. The living room confirmed it. On the coffee table, a half-empty bottle of Chardonnay, 2 wine glasses, one smeared with lipstick, an open magazine dated just last week, a throw blanket from the guest room draped across the couch like someone had napped there. Terrence pointed sharply. Does this look empty to you? Lorraine's eyes flicked to the wine bottle, then back to him. I was just what? He cut in. Hosting guests? Drinking wine? Sleeping on my couch? The officers exchanged a glance. One began jotting notes in a small pad. Ma'am, the younger officer asked evenly. Are you saying you've been inside this home while the owner was away? Lorraine's tone turned defensive. I was safeguarding it. I noticed a stranger leaving last week, a woman with cleaning supplies. I didn't know if she belonged here. That's my housekeeper, Terrence snapped. She's been cleaning this place for years. Lorraine didn't flinch. Well, I couldn't be sure. With all the crime these days, you can't be too careful. Terrence moved toward the kitchen. The evidence only piled higher. Groceries he hadn't bought, leftovers in glass containers he didn't own, a bag of apples he'd never purchased. On the counter, a coffee mug and spoon still sticky with cereal milk. You've been living here, he said flatly. Lorraine shifted her weight. I thought it was safer if someone stayed inside. You know, to deter anything from happening. The younger officer's tone sharpened. Ma'am, you realize this is trespassing. Even if your intentions were good, you can't occupy someone's home without permission. I had a key. She shot back, as if that made it excusable. Terrence's head snapped toward her. You had a key? How? Her gaze slid sideways. Back when I chaired the security committee, we kept spares for emergencies. I guess mine was never collected. The older officer frowned. That's not standard procedure, ma'am. We'll need to include this in our report. Outside, neighbors had gathered, pressing between the iron gates, whispering. Some looked embarrassed. Others entertained. Terrence's jaw tightened. So let me get this straight. You called the cops on me, accused me of breaking into my own home, while you were actually living in it. Lorraine hesitated, then muttered. I didn't see it that way. Oh, I'm sure you didn't, he said, bitterness cutting through. The officer stepped in, sensing the heat rising. Mr. Blakemore, would you like us to remain while you inspect the rest of the property? If anything's missing or damaged, we can document it now. Yes, Terrence said firmly. We're doing that. He led them toward the guest wing, a part of the house he rarely used. But as he rounded the corner, his steps slowed. Suitcases lined the wall. A laundry basket sat neatly on the bed. And on the nightstand, a framed photo of Lorraine with 3 other women, wine glasses raised in a toast. This isn't just you checking in, Terrence said, his voice edged with disbelief. You moved in. You treated my house like a hotel. Color rose in Lorraine's cheeks, but she didn't answer. The younger officer kept writing, pen scratching across his notepad. Ma'am, you'll need to gather your belongings, under our supervision. And we'll be having a separate discussion about this. From the doorway, Terrence stood frozen, surveying the evidence of her intrusion. Suitcases, wine bottles, laundry. The invasion wasn't just physical, it was personal. Disrespectful. Humiliating. And as much as it stung now, he knew the bigger storm was still coming. Once the neighbors chose sides, this absurd incident would explode into a community war. The officer's posture had shifted, from suspicion of Terrence to an uncomfortable acknowledgement of the truth. Lorraine, however, showed no remorse. If anything, she looked irritated at being confronted. Officer Delaney adjusted his sunglasses. All right, Mr. Blakemore. We'll still need to confirm ownership through dispatch. Standard procedure, even if your ID matches the address. Terrence pulled out his phone. I can make this easier. I've got the deed in my cloud drive. Want me to airdrop it? A faint smirk crossed Delaney's face. That'll work. He tapped a few buttons, and seconds later was scrolling through the legal PDF. Terrence's name, the Alder Bend Drive address, everything in order. Officer Ramirez turned toward Lorraine. Ma'am, I think this confirms the property belongs to him. Lorraine's lips twitched, as though she was choking back a retort. I never said it didn't. I said I was worried about strangers. That's all. That's not all, Terrence snapped. You admitted you saw someone unfamiliar, so you used a key you weren't supposed to have. You broke into my home. You lived here. 2 weeks. His voice hardened. That's not concern. That's squatting. I wouldn't call it that. Lorraine replied coolly. I was protecting the property. Anyone could have vandalized it. Terrence let out a bitter laugh. Right. Because nothing says protection like drinking my wine, eating my food, and sleeping in my bed. Lorraine's eyes narrowed. I never touched your bed. Oh, my mistake. The guest wing. Terrence shot back, his sarcasm slicing through the heavy air. Officer Ramirez stepped between them. All right, let's keep this civil. Mr. Blakemore, can you confirm if anything's missing or damaged? Terrence gestured toward the kitchen. The food. The wine. She's been throwing parties here. Check the trash bin outside, an entire bag of takeout containers, and not the kind I buy. Ramirez scribbled notes, while Officer Delaney radioed dispatch. Static crackled, clipped voices exchanged. Then Delaney gave a short nod. Confirmed. You're the owner. And yes, your housekeeper's car matches the earlier report. She's been here on schedule, just like you said. Terrence's jaw tightened. So my housekeeper was the suspicious person you called the police on? Yes, Lorraine said flatly. And it never occurred to you to ask me before accusing her of breaking in? You weren't here, she replied simply. Terrence let out a humorless laugh. Exactly. And you weren't supposed to be here either. This isn't your business. Outside, the audience had grown. A man in gym shorts jogged past, pretending to check his watch but lingering. 2 women in wide-brimmed sun hats openly filmed with their phones. Terrence turned toward them. You all might as well take notes for the next HOA meeting. One woman stifled a laugh. The other quickly looked away. Lorraine, however, stood unshaken. One woman stifled a laugh. The other quickly looked away. Lorraine, however, stood unshaken. I think most people here appreciate what I've done. No one wants strangers hanging around an empty house. Terrence stepped closer, closing the gap between them. You mean people you don't know, or people you've decided don't belong here? There's a difference. Lorraine's expression hardened, but before she could reply, Officer Delaney cut in. We're not here to debate intentions. Here's what's happening. Mr. Blakemore is in the right. Ma'am, you'll need to vacate immediately. If you refuse, we proceed with trespassing charges. For the first time, a flicker of panic crossed Lorraine's face. It vanished quickly, masked by defiance as she crossed her arms. Fine. I'll leave. But I'm taking my things with me. That's fine, Terrence said. Take whatever you brought. But if anything of mine is missing, we're filing charges. Lorraine's glare lingered before she spun toward the guest wing. The officers followed, both to supervise and to keep the situation from turning physical. Terrence stayed rooted in the living room, dragging a hand down his face. The adrenaline was ebbing, replaced by raw frustration. He could already see the fallout, the HOA politics, the gossip, the way stories twisted until the truth became just another rumor. She calls the cops on me, he muttered, and I'm the one explaining myself? Unreal. Outside, traffic slowed as drivers craned for a look. A teenager on a skateboard called out to a neighbor, who whispered back while pointing toward the house. By sunset, Terrence knew everyone within 3 blocks would have their own version of what happened. And if he thought the worst was over, he was wrong. Lorraine wasn't leaving quietly. The sharp slap of her sandals echoed against the tile as she stomped down the guest wing hall. It was deliberate, loud enough for him, and for every curious ear outside. Terrence stayed in the living room, gripping the edge of the sofa, willing himself to stay calm. But then he heard it, the unmistakable scrape of a drawer sliding open in the distance. Terrence's patience finally snapped. "Hey!" His voice echoed down the hall. "You don't need to be going through my drawers. I'm just getting my things." Lorraine shot back, her tone defensive and clipped. The officers were with her, but even from the living room Terrence could feel the tension bleeding through the walls. He followed, sneakers squeaking against polished floors, until he reached the guest wing. A suitcase lay open on the bed, not filled with Lorraine's clothes, but half stuffed with bottles of wine from his cellar, still wrapped in tissue paper, and a neat stack of dinner plates cushioned in bubble wrap. Terrence stopped cold in the doorway. "You're packing my things." Lorraine didn't turn. "I was holding on to these for safekeeping." "Safekeeping?" Terrence's voice sharpened. "That's my 2015 Cabernet Reserve. Those plates belong to my grandmother. Safekeeping means leaving them in my house, not stealing them into your suitcase." Officer Ramirez stepped in firm. "Ma'am, that's not your property. Put it back." "Now." Lorraine sighed, as though the request were beneath her. "Fine. But if something had happened while you were gone, you'd be thanking me." Terrence ignored her. His eyes swept the room, the bathroom stocked with toiletries he hadn't bought, a makeup bag on the counter, a new bathrobe on the door. He turned to Officer Delaney. "Do you see this? She wasn't checking in. She was living here." Delaney nodded, jotting notes. "We'll document everything." That's when Terrence noticed the envelopes on the nightstand, his mail. He rifled through them, bank notices, credit card statements, even a letter from his insurance company. His name, his address, all opened. "You've been going through my mail?" he asked, eyes locking on her. Lorraine finally turned, meeting his glare without a hint of shame. "I was making sure nothing urgent slipped through. You should be grateful. I caught a late fee notice before it got worse." Terrence let out a sharp laugh. "Grateful? You don't see how insane this is?" The officers said nothing, but their silence was heavy. Then came the final straw. In the adjoining sitting area, Terrence froze. His favorite leather armchair, dragged from his office, was covered in crumbs. The side table bore a deep wine ring. "That's it," he snapped. "Officers, I want everything documented. Every glass. Every bottle. Every letter. I don't care how small." Ramirez nodded. "We'll take a full inventory before she leaves." Lorraine muttered something under her breath, but when Terrence asked her to repeat it, she stayed silent. From the doorway, a neighbor appeared, a woman in a wide-brimmed hat, voice low. "You should know, she's been telling people you abandoned the place. Said you were never here. Claimed she was looking after it." Terrence's head snapped toward her. "She said what?" The woman nodded. "Some believed her. Some didn't. But she's been loud about it." Terrence felt the air shift. This wasn't just his house anymore. This was his reputation, and it was already on trial in his own neighborhood. "All right," Delaney said, his tone final. "Ma'am, finish packing. Then you're leaving. Now." Lorraine's eyes flicked from the neighbor to Terrence, then she smirked. "Looks like the whole block's paying attention." Terrence didn't answer, but he could see it already. Conversations in hushed kitchens, whispers over fences, texts bouncing from one house to another. By nightfall, there'd be 5 different versions of this story, and the neighborhood would be split clean down the middle. By the time Lorraine dragged her luggage to the foyer, the audience outside had doubled. People from 2 streets over now strolled past, pretending to take evening walks. Phones were out. Whispers carried. Lorraine made a show of arranging her haul: 3 suitcases, 2 tote bags, a folded quilt, and a grocery sack crammed with odds and ends. Don't you think this is humiliating enough? Terrence asked, nodding toward the gawking crowd. I don't feel humiliated, Lorraine said coolly, sipping her case. I was doing the right thing. The right thing? Terrence's laugh was sharp, bitter. You called the cops on me, told my neighbors I'd abandoned my home, and turned my sunroom into wine night. Which part of that was the right thing? You're welcome, by the way, Lorraine said, lifting her chin. If I hadn't been here, who knows what could have happened? You think your housekeeper would have stopped a break-in? My housekeeper works here. You don't, Terrence snapped. You weren't protecting anything. You were making yourself comfortable. Lorraine glanced at the officers, as if expecting support. I didn't break in. I used a key. A key given to me when I was on the HOA security committee. And you should have returned it years ago. Terrence shot back. You weren't safeguarding anything. You were keeping access to other people's homes. Officer Delaney cut in, his voice firm. Ma'am, unauthorized access is illegal, no matter how you justify it. Lorraine folded her arms. I don't care what you call it. I know this neighborhood better than anyone. I've lived here 20 years. I've seen renters trash yards, delivery guys casing houses. I know what to look for. You don't look for things by moving in, Terrence said, his voice rising. Lorraine shrugged. Sometimes you take action. You were gone. The house was empty. A woman was leaving with bags of stuff. My cleaning lady, Terrence cut in. Doing laundry. Because she works here. Lorraine ignored him. And I thought, not on my watch. So I kept the lights on. Brought in the mail. Made the place look lived in. That's how you deter crime. A deterrent? Terrence snapped. You were the trespasser. You turned my house into your clubhouse. You went through my mail. You drank my wine. You used my things. Lorraine's eyes narrowed. I was keeping an eye on your bills. If you can't see that as help, that's your problem. From the doorway, another voice cut in, Victor Delmar, an older neighbor with a cane. Lorraine, you crossed the line this time. She shot him a glare. Stay out of it, Victor. No, Victor said, stepping closer. You've been bossing people around for years, acting like you own this street. And now? You've embarrassed all of us. You made the whole neighborhood look like fools. Lorraine's cheeks flushed. You wouldn't understand. You rent. Victor let out a sharp laugh. You think that matters? Wrong is wrong. And what you did to Terrence was wrong. The crowd outside stirred, some murmuring agreement, others muttering that Lorraine had only been trying to be a good neighbor. Terrence turned to the officers. Can we speed this up? I'd like her out before sunset. Ramirez gave a curt nod. Almost done. Ma'am, anything else inside? Lorraine hesitated, then shook her head. No. But you should all remember, I've done more for this neighborhood than anyone here. Terrence stepped closer, dropping his voice so only she and the officers could hear. That's over now. No one's ever going to trust you again. Her eyes met his. For the first time, the smugness was gone, replaced by something sharper. Resentment. Maybe even fear. But as she stepped into the desert sunlight, bags in hand, the tension didn't fade with her. It spread, slipping into every porch conversation, every whisper across hedges. By early evening, Alder Bend Drive no longer looked like a quiet residential street. It looked like a stage. Couples leaned on porch railings. Retirees sipped iced tea from lawn chairs. Lorraine's slow walk down the driveway, luggage in tow, had become a parade nobody wanted to miss. Terrence stood at the front door, arms crossed, watching. Some neighbors avoided his gaze. Others gave Lorraine small, hesitant waves, afraid to pick sides too openly. A few, mostly her loyal HOA allies, nodded in approval, murmuring things like, "We know you meant well." Lorraine didn't miss a beat. She tossed her hair back, lips pressed into a thin smile for those who still seemed to support her. By the curb, Victor Delmar leaned on his cane, his terrier Duke at his side. "Don't let her spin it, Terrence," he called out. She'll be telling people you're the one who should apologize. Lorraine turned sharply. That's not what I'm saying, Victor. But someone had to do something. We can't just let houses sit empty with strangers coming and going. Strangers? Victor barked back. That was his cleaner. You've seen her before. You just don't like admitting when you're wrong. From across the street, Denise Calhoun raised her voice. She wasn't wrong to be cautious. Crime's up everywhere, and you all know it. Better safe than sorry. Victor laughed bitterly. Breaking into your neighbor's house isn't being safe. It's criminal. The murmurs swelled into full-blown debate. Neighbors weren't whispering anymore. They were arguing openly on their lawns. Anthony Vega, a younger neighbor, spoke up from his driveway. It's not that simple. Maybe Lorraine overstepped, but she's no burglar. She's been here forever. She looks out for the place. She looks out for herself. Victor shot back. This isn't the first time. Remember when she told that delivery kid to leave because she didn't recognize him? The poor kid lost his job over it. Denise stiffened. That's not the same thing. Anthony shrugged. Feels like it's in the same ballpark. From inside, Terrence could hear every word outside. It was as if someone had turned up the volume on the entire street. He stepped out onto the porch, eyes sweeping over the clusters of neighbors. You can argue all night if you want, he said loudly. But none of you had to walk into your own home and find someone else living in it. Until that happens, you don't know how it feels. Some heads nodded. Others shifted uncomfortably, avoiding his gaze. Lorraine stopped in the middle of the street, her bag at her feet. I've been keeping this neighborhood safe for years. If that makes me the bad guy in your story, so be it. You're not the bad guy in my story, Terrence replied evenly. You're just someone who doesn't know when to stop. For a moment, silence blanketed the street. Then Victor muttered, That's the problem. She never has. The officers began to wrap up, heading for their cars. Officer Delaney gave Terrence a small nod. We'll file the report. If you want to pursue charges, you'll need to go through the county attorney's office. I'm thinking about it, Terrence said, his eyes locked on Lorraine. As the patrol cars pulled away, the crowd slowly thinned, though not without a few whispered parting shots. Two men in matching golf shirts passed by, voices low but audible. Could have been worse. Lucky nothing happened. He'll probably make a big deal out of it. It was clear, Alder Bend Drive wasn't going to forget this. The only question was whether it would fade into another HOA squabble, or ignite into something much larger. Inside, the house felt heavier than when he first walked in. Not because of the Arizona heat, but because Terrence knew this wasn't going to blow over. Officer Ramirez lingered in the foyer, flipping his notepad closed. Mr. Blakemore, if you want to press charges for trespassing or unlawful entry, you'll need to contact the Maricopa County Attorney's Office. We've documented everything, the wine, the mail, the guest room. It's all in the report. Terrence rubbed the bridge of his nose. And the key? The one she used to get in? Delaney nodded. That could be considered unlawful possession, especially since she's no longer on the HOA. But it would likely be rolled into the trespassing charge. What's the process? You file a complaint at the county office, Delaney explained. They decide whether to prosecute. Given the documentation, it's a strong case. But, his voice dropped, it'll be public. Neighbors will know. This won't stay private. Terrence gave a dry laugh. It's already public. Half the street was outside tonight. Ramirez tucked his pen away. Then it comes down to this. Do you want to make an example of it? Some people decide it's not worth the hassle. Others? It's the principle that matters. Before Terrence could respond, a knock echoed at the door. Victor stepped inside without waiting, Duke trotting at his heels. Sorry to interrupt. I just wanted to say, if you go through with charges, you've got my statement. I'll back you up. Delaney looked at him. Were you a witness to her being in the house? Not today, Victor said, leaning on his cane. But last week, I saw her parked in your driveway. carrying grocery bags inside. I figured you asked her to check in. Now I know better. That's useful, Ramirez said. We'll add it to the report. Victor turned to Terrence. She's going to spin this. Make it sound like she was protecting you. Like you overreacted. The only way to stop that is to put it on record. Make it clear she crossed the line. Terrence considered. He knew Victor was right. In a neighborhood like this, truth wasn't decided by facts. It was decided by repetition. By whose version spread the fastest. And Lorraine had always been good at telling hers. Delaney gave a final nod. We'll leave you to think it over. But the sooner you decide, the better. Complaints move faster when they're fresh. When the officers left, Victor stayed. His voice dropped. I've been here long enough to know she won't stop. She's pushed before, but nothing this bold. If you let this slide, she'll take it as permission. I hear you, Terrence said. But if I take this to court, it'll be a circus. Neighbors will pick sides. I'll deal with fallout for months. Fallout's already here, Victor said flatly. Half the street thinks you're ungrateful for her protection. The other half is furious on your behalf. That divide? That's her doing, not yours. Terrence leaned against the doorway, staring at the pavers leading down to the street. I just got home, Victor. I didn't ask for any of this. And now I'm talking about court. That's the thing about people like her, Victor said. They don't think about the mess they leave behind. They think about how they look in the moment. You either set boundaries now, or spend the rest of your time here reacting to her. Terrence exhaled slowly. Victor was right. This wasn't just about Lorraine anymore. It was about every neighbor watching, wondering how far they could push without consequence. All right, he said finally. I'll call the county office Monday morning. Victor nodded. Good. I'll walk you through what to expect. As Victor left, Terrence looked around his foyer. The wine glasses still sat on the coffee table, lipstick stains glinting in the light. His grandmother's plates were back in the cabinet, but it didn't erase the fact that his home had been treated like someone else's playground. Deciding to press charges was one thing. Confronting Lorraine face to face would be another. And that moment came sooner than he thought. Sunday morning, as Terrence stepped outside to pick up the paper, there she was, standing at the end of his driveway, arms folded like she owned the place. He froze mid-step. You lost? Lorraine shook her head. No. I'm here to clear the air, before you make a mistake. Terrence walked toward her slowly. The only mistake would be letting this slide. She tilted her head. So it's true. You're going to press charges? That's the plan, he said flatly. I've already spoken to the police. Her eyebrows lifted. You really want to go down that road? You think this is going to make you look like the reasonable one? Lorraine asked. I don't care how it makes me look, Terrence shot back. What I care about is making sure you never pull this stunt again, on me, or anyone else. Lorraine stepped closer, lowering her voice so only he could hear. You think you're the first person to stand up to me here? They either move, or they learn to keep quiet. You should think carefully about which one you want to be. Terrence let out a humorless laugh. So now you're threatening me? It's not a threat, she said evenly. It's a reality check. People here trust me. I've been part of this community for decades. You've been here what, 4 years? 4, he said. And in those 4, I've managed not to break into anyone's home and throw wine nights in their living room. Her jaw tightened. You're exaggerating. Really? Want me to list it out? Terrence's voice sharpened. You called the cops on me for being in my own house. You told neighbors I abandoned the place. You drank my wine. Used my kitchen. Slept in my guest room. Went through my mail. And you expect me to treat you like some misunderstood do-gooder? Lorraine crossed her arms, defiant. I made a judgment call. You might not like it, but it came from a good place. Break-ins happen around here. People get targeted. That's not what this was, Terrence snapped. You weren't preventing a crime. You were taking advantage of an opportunity. And now you're furious because you got caught." Her eyes flickered, but she didn't answer. Instead, she glanced at the blinds in the houses nearby, tilted just enough for watching eyes. "You think they'll all back you?" she asked finally. "Some will. But others will see you as overreacting. They'll remember you as the guy who dragged a neighbor into court instead of handling it quietly." "Good," Terrence said flatly. "Let them remember me as the guy who didn't let someone walk all over him." Lorraine gave a dismissive laugh. "You'll regret it. Court's messy. Costs time, money. You might even lose friends. I'd rather lose a few fake friends than let you believe this was acceptable." They locked eyes, the silence taut. A lawnmower buzzed faintly in the distance. Then Terrence stepped past her toward the mailbox. "We're done here, Lorraine. If you've got something to say it to my lawyer." "You'll see, Terrence," she called after him. "People will take my side. They always do." He didn't look back. Not this time. Lorraine stood there a moment longer, sandals clicking against the pavement as she walked away. From across the street, Victor called out, "She bothering you again?" Terrence shook his head. "Not anymore. She just doesn't know it yet." But even as the words left his mouth, he knew this wasn't finished. The real battle was only beginning. Monday morning, Terrence drove downtown to the Maricopa County Attorney's office. The police paperwork in hand, he filed the official complaint. Trespassing. Unlawful possession of a key. Possible mail tampering. The clerk stamped the documents with a thud and explained the process in a matter-of-fact tone. No drama. No fireworks. Just a signature that quietly set the wheels in motion. But the drama wouldn't play out in court first. It would play out on Alder Bend Drive. By Tuesday evening, word had spread like wildfire. Lorraine hadn't been served yet, but she knew. Terrence spotted her at the corner, flanked by Denise Calhoun and two other women. Their posture told the story, heads tilted in, hands gesturing, voices pitched just loud enough for fragments to carry. "All I did was try to help. He's blowing it out of proportion." Denise caught Terrence's eye and offered a tight smile. The others didn't bother. Victor wandered over, Duke trotting at his side. "She's on a campaign," he muttered. "Telling everyone you're suing her out of spite." Terrence smirked. "Spite would be buying her house and painting it neon orange. This is accountability." Thursday night, the HOA meeting was standing room only. Normally the dullest night of the month. Landscaping budgets, pool schedules, petty arguments about paint colors. But this time? Folding chairs lined the walls, people packed shoulder to shoulder, standing in the back. Raymond Klein, the mild-mannered HOA president, tried to begin with the agenda. "First order of business." Lorraine shot her hand up. "I'd like to address the smear campaign going on against me." Raymond sighed. "Lorraine, this isn't. It is HOA business." She cut in, her voice sharp. "One of our members is dragging me into court over something that was clearly a misunderstanding. I acted in the best interests of this community." The room stirred. Some nodded, others crossed their arms. And just like that, the fight that began in Terrence's living room had shifted to center stage. A few murmurs of agreement rippled through the crowd, but just as many heads shook. Terrence stood. "Since you're talking about me, let's be clear. You lived in my home for nearly 2 weeks without permission. You drank my wine, opened my mail, told people I'd abandoned my property. That's not a misunderstanding, it's trespassing. You weren't here," Lorraine countered, arms folded. "And that gave you the right to move in?" Terrence shot back. "You even called the police on me for being in my own house. Then acted like you were doing me a favor." From the back, Victor's voice rang out. "He's right. I saw you going in and out. You weren't just checking on it, you were living there." That cracked the room open. A quiet neighbor, Iris Moreno, spoke up. "She told me he'd given her permission. That's the only reason I kept quiet." Gasps rippled. Lorraine's composure faltered. "I never said." "You did." Iris cut her off, her tone firm. Raymond, the HOA president, raised his hands. Enough. This meeting's off track. HOA has no jurisdiction here. Whatever happens will be decided outside this room. Lorraine sank back into her seat, but the damage was done. The look she received said it all. Many no longer believed her version of events. The next morning, the official papers arrived. She refused to take them at first, until told twice it was a legal summons. Trespassing. Unlawful possession of a key. Mail tampering. The case was real now. Over the following days, Lorraine's presence shrank. No more corner patrols, no loud greetings on the street. Her loyal few still huddled with her, but always behind closed doors. Terrence, meanwhile, felt a shift. Neighbors who'd been neutral began offering nods, brief greetings, even quiet words of support. Not everyone was convinced, but the balance had tipped. The first hearing was procedural. Lorraine appeared in a navy pantsuit, expression neutral, eyes fixed anywhere but him. No sweeping rulings, but the case moved forward. Walking out of court, Terrence didn't feel triumphant. What he felt was lighter, because he'd done what so many avoid, push back, even when it meant standing in the spotlight. Back in the neighborhood, the tension hadn't vanished, but it had softened, like a storm rolling off toward the horizon. Lorraine kept her head down, her daily walks reduced to quick trips between house and car. One evening, Victor joined Terrence on the back patio, Duke curled at his feet. "People think it's about the legal stuff," Victor said. "But it's not. It's about the line you drew. Once you make it clear where that line is, people think twice before crossing it." "I never wanted this fight," Terrence admitted. "I just wanted to come home. But if I'd let it go, I'd have been saying it's okay for someone else to decide my boundaries for me." Victor nodded. "That's the truth. If you don't set your boundaries, someone else will." The next HOA meeting was calmer. Lorraine sat quietly in the middle row. No interruptions, no speeches. A few glanced at her, but most kept their eyes on the agenda. Whatever power she'd held in that room had slipped away. As the meeting ended, Terrence caught her eye near the door. No smile. No nod. Just silence. And in that silence, he realized he didn't need her apology. What he needed was exactly what he'd earned, space to live in his own home without interference. That night, Terrence poured a glass of his own wine and sat in the sunroom, the same space Lorraine had once claimed for her. Ladies' night. The house felt different now. Not just because it was his again, but because he had reclaimed it. There would still be whispers, of course. Some would always see him through this lens. But that didn't matter. He couldn't control their stories, only his own. And that was the lesson. Peace without respect isn't peace. It's just silence. Respect comes from knowing when to stand your ground, even when it's uncomfortable, even when it costs you. So protect your space. Not just the walls of your house, but the boundaries that make your life your own. Because the moment you let someone else define them, you've already lost more than you realize.